of America, and they don't like most of the Trump voters because they are Americans. And De Niro, how stupid is he without a script? Isn't that amazing? I used to think, wow, that guy's brilliant. But once you take the words away from him, he is so stupid. Then when he goes, impeachment will make America great again, and everybody's, how intellectually deprived he is. He's a coke-addled simpleton, without a script. It is hysterical.
He was the ghost in The Taxi, the silent watcher whose simmering rage could burn a hole through the screen. He was the raging bull in the ring, a force of nature who took his pain and turned it into brutal, beautiful art. He was the quiet monster in the back of a smoky bar, the calculating gangster whose deadly decisions were made with a chilling stillness. For decades, Robert De Niro wasn't just an actor. He was the undisputed king of cinematic cool, an icon of rebellion who built a towering legacy on characters that were dangerous, unpredictable, and fiercely independent. He was the man who spoke volumes with a simple, unnerving glance, and could project more menace with a quiet stare than most actors could with a full-throated scream. He was the artist, the enigma, but somewhere along the road, that master of subtle performance vanished, seemingly abducted and replaced by a completely different character, a furious red-faced political pundit whose only acting note was unfiltered rage. The quiet intensity that defined his career was gone, swapped for loud, sputtering tirades on daytime television. The man who once challenged every system he encountered became its most predictable, angry mouthpiece. This jarring transformation left millions of fans scratching their heads, asking the same bewildered question: what on earth happened to Robert De Niro? The answer, it turned out, wouldn't come from a political analyst or a film historian. It would come from the most unlikely source imaginable: a late-night comedian with a permanent smirk, a tongue sharper than a razor blade, and a complete refusal to take the new performance seriously. Greg Gutfeld didn't just have a theory about the fall of an icon. He had a verbal wrecking ball made of pure wit, and he was about to swing it directly at the fragile, crumbling facade of a Hollywood legend.
Last night, an elderly, confused man went missing in New York. Luckily, a band of self-satisfied elitists found him babbling on the street, threw some pants on him, gave him a stage.
Oh my God.
I'm going to say one thing. Trump.
It kills me. Talk about persuasive. Really, I was on the fence about Trump, but then I decided to really listen to one of the great generational leaders of American pop culture. And the clenched fists at the end, that really drove it home. It looked like he was pressing a 2-pound weight in a Jenny Craig commercial.
Oh my God.
Look at it again. It's so cute. Robert De Niro's 29-year-old child, Aaron, has come out as transgender. When the press asked her for comment, she said, "You talking to they, them?" Thank you.
De Niro's metamorphosis wasn't a private struggle. It was a public spectacle, broadcast live for all to see. He became a fixture on shows like The View, where his appearances followed a bizarre and predictable ritual. He'd be seated at the table, offered a series of softball questions designed not to elicit information but to ignite a fuse, and then, right on cue, he would explode. He was treated less like a respected artist there to discuss his craft, and more like a political attacked dog being let off the leash. Each performance was a carbon copy of the last. His fists would clench, his face would contort into a mask of righteous fury, and he'd spit venom about the state of the country, often descending into a flurry of F-bombs that seemed to be the only words he could summon when the carefully prepared script of his life ran out. The hosts would nod along with solemn, almost reverent approval, as if they were witnessing a profound act of civic courage rather than a wealthy septuagenarian having a theatrical tantrum in a designer suit. To the insulated world of celebrity activism, this was bravery, but to Greg Gutfeld, watching from the cynical sidelines, it was something far more fascinating. It was the worst, most unconvincing acting of De Niro's entire career. Gutfeld saw a man who had completely lost the plot, a legend so drunk on his own fame that he couldn't see the cringeworthy parody he had become.
And the star of Dirty Grandpa, Robert De Niro, getting censored by The View after raging like a bull who saw a red MAGA hat.
And they might think that it's going to make their life better, or they just want to, excuse my French, literally, it's almost like he wants to do the worst that he could possibly do to show this country.
Jesse, I find that he's smartest when they drop his audio. The real story is how accusations of Trump's nutty behavior always ends up with the accusers acting nuttier. De Niro calls Trump crazy as he goes crazier. Adam Schiff calls Trump a liar as he makes up quotes. Dems talk about undermining institutions as they try to undermine an election. But when asked for reasons why Trump shouldn't be president, all Bobby had were sputtering F-bombs. His resistance had run out of script.
Enter the Roastmaster General of late-night television. Gutfeld approached the De Niro phenomenon not as a political adversary, but as a cultural pathologist dissecting a very public illness. He didn't bother to engage with De Niro on policy points because he knew instinctively that wasn't the issue. The rage wasn't about policy, it was about performance. Instead, Gutfeld took aim at the persona itself. With his trademark calm, he began to peel back the layers of self-righteous hypocrisy with the surgical precision of a master satirist. He famously compared De Niro to a very loud Yelp review in a human suit, expanding the analogy to paint a picture of one of those all-caps online rants about a Starbucks lid being on crooked. The joke landed with devastating force because it contained a powerful, undeniable truth. De Niro's political commentary lacked all nuance, resembling the fury of a perpetually dissatisfied customer demanding to see the manager of America. Gutfeld's weapon wasn't outrage. It was a simple, brutal mirror held up to Hollywood's self-appointed moral compass, and the reflection it showed was not of a brave revolutionary, but of a cranky old man, hilariously out of touch. The centerpiece of Gutfeld's masterful critique was the deconstruction of the tough guy illusion, an image De Niro had meticulously crafted for over 50 years. When De Niro famously declared to a cheering audience that he wanted to punch him in the face, referring to the former president, Gutfeld found the declaration absolutely hysterical. This, he pointed out, was coming from a man who hadn't thrown a real punch since a choreographed fight scene required 6 stuntmen, a team of on-set medics, and a fully stocked catering truck. Gutfeld painted a picture of glorious, grade-A irony, the actor who built a career glorifying mobsters who settled disputes with ice picks, car bombs, and baseball bats was now clutching his pearls over political tweets and mean words. He imagined De Niro attempting to land a punch today, and his shoulder immediately filing for early retirement and suing for damages. Gutfeld argued that the real danger wasn't some politician De Niro disliked. The real absurdity was a pampered Hollywood icon living in a fortified bubble of unimaginable wealth and constant agreement, threatening people on national television like a cranky grandpa who's had his favorite pudding cup stolen from the nursing home refrigerator.
It's a good time to reflect on how Americans fought and died so that we may enjoy the freedoms guaranteed to us by a democratic government. A government that, as President Lincoln said, of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Under Trump, this kind of government will perish from the earth. I don't mean to scare you. No, wait, maybe I do mean to scare you. If Trump returns to the White House, you can kiss these freedoms goodbye. The idiot is the president. The guy is a fool. Our government today, with the prompting of our baby-in-chief, has in chief, I call him.
That's some reliable source you got there. This is what moms call bad language, or what producers call great TV. The plan: get an irrational figure at peak derangement and goad him into snapping. It's like cabaret for the chronically obsessed.
But Gutfeld's most devastating and profoundly insightful point was about what happens when the script is taken away. This was the core of his entire thesis. He argued that De Niro's genius was never truly his own. He was a magnificent vessel, a brilliant conduit for the powerful words of legendary screenwriters like Paul Schrader, David Mamet, and Martin Scorsese. They gave him the poetry of rage, the philosophy of the streets, the soul of the broken man. Without their words, Gutfeld claimed the entire mystique vanished, revealing what he bluntly called an intellectually deprived simpleton. He observed that De Niro's anger wasn't rooted in practical policy or deep ideological conviction. It was a purely emotional, surface-level reaction, the kind of blind rage that lacks any self-awareness. Gutfeld diagnosed him as a man suffering from a profound case of celebrity insulation, an affliction common among the ultra-famous who are surrounded by a paid army of sycophants who either tell them they're a genius or desperately want something from them. There was no one left in De Niro's world to gently tap him on the shoulder and tell him to calm down, that he was making a complete and utter fool of himself. This theory was put to the ultimate undeniable test in a moment that went viral and perfectly encapsulated Gutfeld's entire argument, the now infamous Gotham Awards incident. De Niro took the stage to present an award, but as he began to read from the teleprompter, he froze. His face registered confusion, then annoyance, then pure rage. He quickly realized the anti-Trump passages of his pre-approved speech had been edited out. Instead of gracefully moving on, improvising, or simply presenting the award, he descended into a bizarre, rambling on-stage meltdown. He angrily accused the event organizers of censorship before awkwardly pulling out his phone to read the missing lines to a captive but visibly uncomfortable audience. To Gutfeld and his panel, this was the smoking gun, the irrefutable evidence. This wasn't a brave rebel fighting for free speech. This was an actor who was literally functionally incapable of performing without his lines. It was a man throwing a public tantrum not because of a grave injustice, but because he was momentarily prevented from preaching to the converted. It was the frantic, desperate act of a performer who realized in terrifying real time that he had no words of his own.
Robert De Niro graced the knitting circle in hell known as The View, where he tried to link random thoughts into a sentence. Joy was there to wind him up, since he's played some of the most unredeemable characters.
You have played some of the most really unredeemable characters. Travis Bickle. Travis Bickle was a psychopathic taxi driver. Jake LaMotta, who used to beat his wife, and he was in The Raging Bull. Is Trump worse than they are?
To me, he is. He has no understanding that I can see of the outside world other than anything around him. He has no idea of what his purpose in life is as the president should be, and that is to pull the country together, to be for the people, to heal wounds, not to open them up and pour salt on them.
De Niro clearly has thought about this. More so than his career, his choice of roles is now down to cinnamon and lobster. I just read that article that you sent me about the last nights of John Belushi and how De Niro was there and just basically partied with him and then split. And it's just like, that's now I just think of him as a really stupid guy.
Well, he's got The Irishman coming out. That looks pretty good.
I'm gonna go see it.
Yeah, we should go see it.
All right, you guys.
From that moment, Gutfeld skillfully broadened his lens, using De Niro as the prime exhibit in his scathing indictment of the entire Hollywood elite. He mercilessly mocked the profound hypocrisy of millionaires in $4,000 shoes, standing on red carpets and lecturing working-class Americans about the people. When was the last time, Gutfeld mused, that Robert De Niro had to worry about the price of eggs, wait in line at the DMV, or fly coach without threatening to sue the pilot for the audacity of breathing too loudly in his presence? He portrayed De Niro as the poster child for the celebrity echo chamber, an artist so cocooned in his world of private jets, exclusive parties, and gated communities that he genuinely believes shouting the same opinions as everyone in his Beverly Hills zip code makes him a modern-day Che Guevara. That's not bravery, Gutfeld quipped with a cutting signature smirk that's karaoke with political Tourette's. The studio audience roared not just because it was funny, but because they recognized the deep, uncomfortable truth in the absurdity.
Good time to reflect on how Americans fought and died so that we may enjoy the freedoms guaranteed to us by a democratic government. A government that, as President Lincoln said, of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Under Trump, this kind of government will perish from the earth. I don't mean to scare you. No, wait, maybe I do mean to scare you. If Trump returns to the White House, you can kiss these freedoms.
The entire bizarre saga reached its sad, almost tragic theatrical climax outside a Manhattan courthouse. In a move that stunned seasoned political strategists, the Biden campaign decided to hold a press conference during the high-profile Trump trial, and their star witness, their secret weapon, was none other than Robert De Niro. There he stood, flanked by campaign operatives, shouting scripted lines over a deafening cacophony of hecklers, news reporters, and car horns. He looked lost, agitated, and deeply profoundly out of his element. He was no longer the cool, menacing figure from his films. He was a confused, elderly man who had seemingly wandered into the middle of a political street brawl he was completely unequipped to handle. For Gutfeld, this was the final, inevitable punchline. De Niro was no longer even pretending to be an independent voice of conscience. He had officially transitioned into a political prop, a celebrity puppet wheeled out to perform his angry man shtick on demand, his strings being pulled by political handlers standing just off camera. In the end, Greg Gutfeld didn't destroy Robert De Niro with a superior political argument or a more compelling ideology. He dismantled him with something far more potent and undeniable: reality. He didn't need to outshout him, he simply held up a mirror and let the world see the ridiculous, distorted reflection. He exposed the bluster behind the bravado, the raw, unfocused rage that masked a startling lack of reason, and the painful, cringe-inducing truth that De Niro had become a walking parody of his own legendary tough guy image. The real battle was never between the political right and left, it was between performance and authenticity, between a carefully constructed legacy and a messy, unscripted reality. And as Gutfeld so hilariously and brutally revealed, once you strip away the magic of the Hollywood script, some of our greatest cinematic heroes are left with nothing compelling to say, becoming more famous for their furious, incoherent rants than for the transcendent art that once made them legends. The tragedy wasn't his politics, it was watching an icon shrink before our very eyes.